Welcome back to Pilot Arnav. For those preparing for DGCA, CPL, or ATPL examinations, mastering meteorology starts with the physical variables that drive the weather. Hit subscribe and let's begin our study of temperature. At a molecular level, temperature and heat are distinct. Temperature measures the average kinetic energy of the molecules. Heat, meanwhile, is the total energy those molecules possess as they vibrate and collide. We record this energy using three primary scales. In Celsius, water freezes at 0 degrees and boils at 100. On the Fahrenheit scale, those same phase changes are marked at 32 and 212 degrees respectively. Physics utilizes the Kelvin scale, which is a thermodynamic absolute. At 0 Kelvin, equivalent to minus 273 degrees Celsius, all molecular motion ceases. This represents the lowest possible temperature in the universe. Exam questions often require rapid conversion between these scales. To find Kelvin from Celsius, add 273. To find Celsius from Kelvin, subtract 273. You must also commit the standard ratio for Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion to memory. Because temperature measures the kinetic state of the air, standardizing these measurements is the first requirement for predicting how energy will move through the atmosphere. Surface temperature is measured using a mercury thermometer inside a Stephenson screen. Its louver box allows air to circulate while blocking direct sunlight. For DGCA standards, it must be recorded exactly 4 feet, or 1.25 meters, above ground. To understand the vertical structure of the atmosphere, we look to the radiosonde. It consists of a helium balloon carrying a thermometer. Ascending, it transmits temperature data from various altitudes back to a ground receiver. Combining the surface baseline with the radiosonde's vertical profile provides the raw data points that meteorologists then interpolate to model the larger three-dimensional temperature distribution of the atmosphere. Solar radiation, or insolation, is the primary energy source for the Earth. Because of the sun's intense surface temperature, this energy is emitted as shortwave radiation. The atmosphere is effectively transparent to this shortwave radiation. Solar energy passes through the air without heating it, striking the Earth's surface directly. The equator receives more heat per unit area than the poles. This difference is not a result of distance from the sun, but strictly the direct angle of incidence of the incoming solar rays. This radiation is composed of 3 parts: 46% infrared, 45% visible light, and 9% UV radiation. As it enters our system, 19% of solar radiation is absorbed by the ozone layer, 51% is absorbed by the Earth's surface, and 30% is reflected back into space. This 30% reflection rate is called the Earth's albedo. It is defined as reflected radiation divided by incident radiation. Highly reflective surfaces like snow can reach an albedo of 80%. Since the atmosphere allows incoming solar energy to pass through, aviation weather is governed by how the Earth re-emits the 51% of energy it absorbs. Once the Earth is heated, it re-radiates energy back toward space. Because the Earth is much cooler than the sun, it emits long-wave radiation. The atmosphere is opaque to these wavelengths, causing it to heat from the bottom up. This is terrestrial radiation. At night, this emission continues without the input of solar energy, resulting in the cooling of the surface. We call this specific process nocturnal radiation. The transfer of heat into the atmosphere occurs through 5 mechanisms. First is terrestrial radiation, heating the lowest air layers. Method 2 is conduction. When air directly contacts the warm ground, kinetic energy transfers from molecule to molecule. Method 3 is convection. Air heated by conduction becomes less dense and rises, vertically carrying heat. Method 4 is condensation. Rising air cools, condensing water vapor into liquid and releasing 540 calories per gram of latent heat. The final method is advection, the horizontal transfer of heat by wind. These 5 mechanisms define the vertical temperature profile, determining the conditions a pilot will encounter at any given flight level. To quantify these conditions, we use the temperature lapse rate, the specific rate at which temperature changes as altitude increases. In the international standard atmosphere, the temperature begins at plus 15 degrees Celsius at mean sea level. In the troposphere, it drops at a rate of 6.5 degrees per kilometer, or 1.98 degrees per 1,000 feet, up to the 11-kilometer tropopause. Above 11 kilometers, the temperature stops decreasing. Up to an altitude of 20 kilometers, it remains constant at -56.5 degrees Celsius. A layer where temperature is constant with height is an isothermal layer. If temperature actually increases with height, it is an inversion layer. Both indicate high atmospheric stability. Night inversions are common. Because the ground cools rapidly after sunset, the lowest kilometer of air becomes colder than the air above it. This leaves a layer of cool, dense air trapped under a layer of warmer air. Understanding these lapse rates and inversions allows pilots to anticipate changes in aircraft performance and locate regions likely to harbor clear air turbulence. The 24-hour cycle of temperature is called diurnal variation. Maximum temperatures are typically recorded at 1500 hours local time, while minimums occur roughly half an hour after sunrise. On a clear day with no wind, this variation averages plus or minus 6 degrees over land. Over the ocean, however, the variation is usually limited to just plus or minus 1 degree. Cloud cover modifies this cycle. Clouds block solar radiation by day, keeping maximums lower. At night, they reflect terrestrial radiation back toward the ground, keeping minimums higher. Cloudy days are cooler, cloudy nights are warmer. Wind also reduces diurnal variation through vertical mixing. By day, it brings cooler air down to the surface. By night, it brings warmer air down to the surface. Windy days are cooler, and windy nights are warmer. Diurnal variation demonstrates that surface temperature is determined by how local conditions interact with the Earth's long-wave radiation. To understand the different heating rates of land and sea, we look at specific heat capacity, the energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. Water has a high capacity, at 1 calorie per gram, while soil requires only 0.2 calories. This means it takes 5 times more energy to raise the temperature of water than it does for land. This disparity means water heats and cools much slower than land. This thermal difference generates coastal weather phenomena like sea breezes and sea fog. Latent heat describes the energy absorbed or released during a state change with no change in temperature. For example, boiling water remains at exactly 100 degrees Celsius while it consumes energy to become vapor. The DGCA syllabus requires knowing these values. Vaporizing 1 gram of water requires 540 calories. Melting 1 gram of ice requires 80 calories. The process is reversible. When liquid water freezes, it releases 80 calories per gram into the environment. This is why the back of a refrigerator feels hot. It is venting the heat extracted from the water as it freezes. These caloric transfers dictate the energy available for phase changes. Specific and latent heat determine the baseline for atmospheric stability, cloud formation, and the resulting weather minimums. Understanding these thermodynamic properties is essential for the DGCA syllabus. If this lesson clarified the mechanics of temperature, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Pilot Arnav for the next flight in our meteorology series. Happy landings! Make sure to hit subscribe to Pilot Arnav's channel so you don't miss any of these deep dives. At its core, temperature is simply the measurement of the average kinetic energy of molecules within a substance. It is how we quantify the degree of hotness or coldness based on how fast those molecules are moving. Heat, on the other hand, is a specific form of energy. Rather than an average, heat represents the sum total of kinetic energy generated by all the molecules within an object combined. This illustration shows exactly why the distinction matters. We have a large bathtub at 60 degrees Celsius next to a small cup of boiling water at 100 degrees. The cup has a higher temperature, meaning its individual molecules are moving faster. But because the bathtub contains exponentially more molecules, the sum total of their kinetic energy is higher. The bathtub has vastly more total heat. This explains exactly why spacecraft don't melt as they pass through the thermosphere. The temperature up there is incredibly high, but the air molecules are so sparse that the total heat content interacting with the rocket is minimal. For aviators, separating the raw speed of individual molecules from the total energy volume of the atmosphere is the first step in calculating weather stability and aircraft performance. To measure temperature practically, we rely on 2 standard reference points, both taken at normal sea level pressure, the melting point of ice and the boiling point of water. This diagram sets our baselines. On the Celsius scale, these points sit at exactly 0 degrees and 100 degrees. On the Fahrenheit scale, the same physical points register as 32 degrees and 212 degrees. To translate between the two, we use a fixed mathematical conversion. Fahrenheit equals 9/5 of the Celsius value plus 32. Because of the different sizes of their respective degrees, there is one precise point where the two scales intersect. At exactly -40 degrees, Celsius and Fahrenheit are equal. You will see this specific question on the DGCA exam. If we continue extracting heat from an object, the molecules slow down until they reach a theoretical state where all movement stops entirely. This theoretical state is called absolute zero. To measure this, we use the Kelvin scale, which starts exactly at this point of zero movement. Absolute zero occurs at -273.16 degrees Celsius. Therefore, to find Kelvin, you simply take your Celsius value and add 273.16. Memorizing these reference points and formulas is non-negotiable. They provide pilots with the standardized framework needed to calculate air density, thrust, and aerodynamic performance anywhere in the world. Let's look at how heat interacts with different materials. Specific heat is defined as the exact amount of energy required to raise a unit mass of a substance by exactly 1 degree Celsius. This bar chart compares the specific heat constants you need to know. Water requires the highest energy input, set at 1.0. Ice sits at 0.5. Soil, however, has a very low specific heat of just 0.2. Because soil requires significantly less energy to warm up, land masses heat up and cool down much faster than large bodies of water. This sharp thermal contrast between the coast and the ocean is the physical engine that drives land and sea breezes. Beyond simple temperature shifts, we have latent heat. This is the energy that is entirely absorbed or released during a phase change between a solid, liquid, or gas. The direction of the phase change dictates the energy flow. When a substance transitions from a solid state towards a gas, like ice melting into water or water evaporating, it absorbs heat from its environment. When it reverses from a gas back to a solid, it releases that stored heat outward. In the troposphere, this heat is moved around through 3 distinct mechanisms. The first is conduction, which is the physical transfer of heat through direct molecular contact. This primarily happens right at the surface of the Earth, where the lowest layer of air physically touches the heated ground. The second mechanism is convection, the vertical transfer of heat. Free convection occurs when solar heating causes warm air to naturally rise. But as this diagram shows, we also have forced convection. This happens when wind physically pushes a parcel of air up over a topographical barrier, like a mountain. As it rises, it cools and releases its heat. The third mechanism is advection. Instead of moving vertically, advection is the horizontal transfer of heat across the Earth's surface, driven entirely by lateral wind currents. Tracking these latent energy states and transfer mechanisms gives a pilot the ability to accurately predict localized conditions, from sudden thermal updrafts to dense coastal fog. All of this thermal energy originates from insolation, the amount of incoming solar radiation striking the Earth. Because the Earth is curved, the obliquity, or angle of the sun's rays, dictates the intensity. Rays strike the equator directly, concentrating the heat, while at the poles they hit at a shallow angle, spreading the same energy over a much wider, cooler area.
When objects absorb this heat, they become what physicists call a black body. A black body is an idealized object that emits electromagnetic radiation purely based on its internal temperature. The mechanics of this radiation are governed by specific laws. The Stefan-Boltzmann law states that the total energy radiated by a black body is proportional to the 4th power of its absolute temperature. Next, Wien's law dictates that the wavelength of that radiation is inversely proportional to the temperature. This explains why the sun, which is incredibly hot, emits its energy in very short waves. Finally, Planck's law describes exactly how that radiated energy is distributed across different wavelengths at any given absolute temperature. This leads us to the 2 types of radiation driving our atmosphere. Solar radiation arrives as incoming short waves, comprising 45% visible light, 9% ultraviolet, and 46% infrared. Terrestrial radiation is the long-wave infrared energy that the Earth re-radiates outward after absorbing the sun's heat. This visual breaks down the Earth's total heat budget. Out of 100 incoming solar rays, the atmosphere and the ozone layer absorb 19. just over half, 51%, actually penetrate through to reach and heat the ground. The remaining 30% never participate in heating our planet. They are reflected back into space by clouds, dust, and the surface itself. This reflecting power of the Earth is known as its albedo. For the DGCA exam, you must memorize these albedo values. During clear weather, the albedo drops to 10%, meaning 5 out of 6 solar rays hit the surface. However, over snow-covered terrain, the albedo jumps to a massive 80% reflection rate. This continuous accounting system, balancing shortwave deposits from the sun against long-wave withdrawals from the Earth, creates the pressure gradients that dictate global atmospheric circulation. As the Earth rotates, it creates a daily temperature cycle. Diurnal variation is the difference between maximum and minimum temperatures within a 24-hour period. This graph charts that variation. On the left, the temperature curve over the open sea remains almost completely flat, varying by roughly 1 degree Celsius. But over land, the rapid heating and cooling of soil creates a massive 20-degree variance from the peak of the day to the dead of night. Wind speed heavily modifies this curve. Calm winds trap localized heat, allowing for extreme temperature swings. Strong winds, conversely, act like a blender, mixing hot and cold air layers together and suppressing the total variation. The coldest point in this cycle does not happen at midnight. The minimum diurnal temperature is actually reached 30 to 60 minutes after sunrise. Even though the sun is up, the Earth continues its nocturnal cooling process, radiating away heat faster than the low morning sun can replenish it. While maximum solar heat strikes exactly at noon, the maximum recorded air temperature is delayed. It takes an additional 2 to 3 hours for the ground to absorb that radiation and transfer the heat to the surrounding air layer. Cloud cover acts as an atmospheric damper on this whole system. During the day, clouds reflect solar radiation outward, lowering the daily maximum. At night, they act as an insulating blanket, trapping terrestrial radiation and raising the overnight minimum. Understanding when these thermal peaks and valleys hit the runway is critical. An unexpected shift in temperature alters air density, which directly impacts your required takeoff distance and your initial climb gradients. To capture this atmospheric data accurately, meteorologists rely on specialized instruments. Standard maximum thermometers use expanding mercury to track high temperatures. Minimum thermometers use highly volatile alcohol, capturing extreme low temperature drops. These instruments must be isolated from direct environmental interference. They are housed inside a standardized enclosure known as the Stevenson screen. The DGCA enforces strict design parameters for these screens. They must be constructed entirely of wood to prevent heat absorption. They are mounted exactly 4 feet, or 1.25 meters, above the ground, and the access door must be oriented away from the sun, so direct rays do not corrupt the readings when opened. Inside, a bimetallic strip accurately measures the ambient temperature, which is the true, undistorted thermal reading of the surrounding air mass. We also calculate the virtual temperature. This is a theoretical value representing the specific temperature at which dry air would share the exact same density and pressure as a given sample of moist air. Using standardized enclosures and theoretical adjustments, meteorologists strip away chaotic variables of the surface environment. This ensures the temperature data pilots receive is pure, reliable, and mathematically sound. That wraps up Chapter 3 on temperature. If this breakdown helped you navigate the DGCA syllabus, subscribe to Pilot Arnav's channel so you don't miss our next lesson. Drop your questions in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next chapter.